Hi, everyone. Welcome to Criminal Procedure Law. This is our first official lecture. I posted the welcome video, but this is the first official lecture. So I'm going to be giving you a brief overview of criminal procedure law, what it is. We're going to talk about some of the concepts behind it. We're also going to kind of delve into what do you think of criminal procedure law? Because people have different philosophies about criminal procedure law and where they how they feel about the Constitution, how crime, rights, all of those things. So we're going to talk about all those things today, and you can kind of get an understanding of where you fall in the realm of criminal procedure law. So I'm going to share my PowerPoint with you so you can see it and me, hopefully at the same time. So what we're going to do is talk about this concept of criminal procedure law. So I have a quote: "No one is compelled to choose the profession of a police officer, but having chosen it, everyone is obliged to live up to the standards of its requirements." So one of the things we're going to talk about today is what are those requirements? What do you have to have in order, or follow, what rules you have to follow in order to be in compliance with criminal procedure law? So to know that, we have to know what the criminal procedure law is in general, and we have to know what those procedures are. And then we have to have the ability to take those procedures and apply them to scenarios that people within the criminal justice system are going to face. So that's what we will be doing throughout the semester. We'll be talking about all of those different things. So we're going to start by just having you think. I want you to think about a couple of things. So what do you think about this? If you could commit a crime and nobody would ever arrest you, punish you whatsoever, would you be willing to do any of these things? Would you steal $1 million? If you could steal $1 million, nobody would ever catch you. You ever know you'd be fine. Would you do it? Would you steal your favorite car? So you'd have to decide, would you steal it if you could? Would you punch someone? Would you murder someone that you hate? So the question is, would you do these things if you had the ability to do it without getting caught? So if I gave you power and authority to do these things and you could never get caught, would you choose to do them? And there's a concept that we look at a lot in criminal procedure law, and it's the idea that if you're given power, you always have the potential to become corrupt with that power. If you're giving absolute power, no checks on you at all, then you're absolutely most likely going to become corrupt. Okay, so power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely. So we need to think about that and what that means in terms of people that work in the criminal justice profession. We give tremendous power to people in criminal justice, police officers, judges, attorneys, juries. We give them tremendous power. How do they use that power? If we don't have any checks and balances on that power, are they going to use it in a corrupt manner? And that's what criminal procedure law really deals with, the use of power and how it's used and what happens if people abuse it. Okay. So one of the things we said is you get tremendous power in the criminal justice system. That means you are given discretion. So does anybody know what discretion means? So think about it. If I say, what does the term discretion means? Think about it in your head. So discretion means just basically the ability to choose, to make choices. Okay. So we give people in the criminal justice professions the ability to make choices. Okay. So we give power to police officers. They can make a choice. Am I going to pull somebody over, or am I not going to pull them over? Am I going to write a ticket, or am I not going to write a ticket? Allowing them to make those choices is the idea of discretion, giving them power to make choices. There's no boss or person sitting right over them every day telling them what to do. They have the ability to make these choices. So hopefully they make them in ethical and moral and constitutional ways that are proper. Okay. So when you talk about the origin of criminal procedure law, you have to think about, where did this law come from? Why do we have criminal procedure law? Well, criminal procedure law most of the criminal procedure laws that we're going to study originated in the 50s and 60s and 70s. And the idea was there was a lot of racial issues back then, okay? There were police abuse, there was racial discrimination, and the police officers were not using their power in a positive way. There was a lot of corruption, okay? Based on that power and corruption, it led the court system, the judicial system, to step in and sort of start regulating their power. So we're not going to allow you to do anything that you want. We're going to regulate your power. Okay, that's criminal procedure law. Criminal procedure law is the rules that regulate how discretion is used. So we have a fundamental principle in our Constitution: equal justice for all people, regardless of race, religion, gender, sexual preference, gender identity. Every single person is equal under the law. So you cannot discriminate against people based on these criteria. If people that work in the criminal justice profession are not doing that, providing justice equally to all, that is a violation of our Constitution. And so we have procedural law that's created in order to assure that people in the criminal justice system are following those rules. And if they're not, there will be consequences. So what is the exact definition of criminal procedure law? Procedural law are the rules or laws that govern or control the people that work in the criminal justice system. So when we're talking about criminal procedure law, we're not talking about laws that apply to you and I, normal average citizens. So there's all kinds of laws we have to follow. You can't murder, you can't steal, you can't steal cars, you can't break into houses, you can't have a weapon illegally. Those are what we call substantive laws. Everybody in the whole country has to follow these laws. When we're talking about criminal procedure law, we're talking about the procedures that only and laws that only apply to people that work in the system, so that the system is fair and it runs properly without corruption or abuse of power. So criminal procedure law are going to be the laws, the rules that govern people that work within the system: police officers, defense attorneys, prosecutors, judges, correctional officers, probation officers, parole officers. So anybody that works within the criminal justice system, they have to follow these criminal procedure laws. These are their special laws to govern what they do. Okay. So I have a little scenario here about Dirty Harry. And you can read the whole scenario. I'll let you read the whole scenario, but basically a girl's kidnapped by a psycho Scorpio. He wants $200,000. He says, if you don't give me $200,000, she's buried alive. I'm just going to let her run out of oxygen and die. So if you give me the money, I'll let her out. If you don't give me the money, she's going to die. Okay. So Dirty Harry tracks him down and finds her, or finds him, sorry. And it has him in an interrogation room and is basically interrogating him, trying to find out where she's at. Okay. So he decides that the only way to save the girl is to beat him until he finally confesses and says where she's at. Now, this is the problem. That is unconstitutional. That is a blatant violation of our Constitution, of the rules governing people within the criminal justice system. Okay. So we have these rules. That's an abuse of power. So what do we do in those situations? If we fundamentally believe in the Constitution and the Supreme Court decisions, then doing that violates the law, and there will be severe consequences, not only to the officer, but if they do find the girl, you will not be able to prosecute this guy for it because the evidence you obtained was in violation of the Constitution. So Scorpio is going to go free and possibly kill or kidnap other people. If you follow the rules, though, the girl may die. So what do you do? How do you figure this out? Which one is the best action? And the problem is there may not be a good answer for either side. This is what we call a genuine moral dilemma, that both sides have very bad consequences. So neither decision may result in a positive, happy result. If you beat up the person, the girl is saved, but the guy goes free and can do it again. If you don't, the girl dies. Okay. So we have to make these choices. So within this class, what I'm going to do is I can't make those choices for you. When you get out of here and you start working in the criminal justice system, you're going to have to make those choices yourself. What I'm going to do is I'm going to teach you what the law is. I'm going to teach you what the procedures say. And then you're going to have to make these choices, these moral dilemma situations. You're going to have to come up with your solutions based on what you know the Constitution says, what you know the consequences are for violating it. You're going to have to weigh those things and you're going to have to make up your own mind. So I'm just going to provide you with the information and the tools that you need to make those decisions. The key word for this week is genuine moral dilemma for the first Balancing Rights lecture. Genuine moral dilemma. So make sure you write it down and you send me an email with that keyword to be marked for attendance. Another way that you hear people talk about it is the ends justify the means. You probably heard that saying before, ends justify the means. Okay, the ends are the final result. So if you're thinking about our Dirty Harry scenario, the ends are the girl's alive and goes free, okay? But the other end is, or the other thing to look at is the means. How did we get the girl free? Well, we beat him up. We violated his constitutional rights. So we may end up having good results, but to get to those good results, we may have violated fundamental constitutional rights that people have. Is that good? Do we want to violate rights to get to the ends? Do the ends, the results justify a violation of our constitutional rights? So that's one of the things that you individually have to decide in your head. If you're only worried about the results, then you're probably more worried about crime control, stopping crime at all costs, even if you do use bad means to do it. If you're really worried about the means or the method that is used to get to the end, then you are more of a due process person. You're worried about the process that's used to get there. And you may be willing to sacrifice bad ends in the names of following constitutional principles. Okay, so people fall differently on the spectrum. Obviously, the perfect balance is don't have bad ends and don't use bad means. And so hopefully you reach that balance where you're perfect between those two things. Some people only care about the ends. Some people only care about the means. So where do you fall on that spectrum? And we're going to talk a lot more about that in the class. Okay, so this is just a quote. Criminal procedure arms the police, judges, prosecutors, and defense attorneys with the knowledge necessary to preserve the rights of the individuals accused of criminal activity. I'm giving you those tools. I'm giving you the arms, the weapons that you need to guide you through the criminal justice process. So you probably don't have a lot of knowledge. What are the procedures, the rules that people in the criminal justice system have to follow? I'm giving you those tools. I'll be teaching you about that. So you will be armed with what you need to make your decisions while you're working in the criminal justice system. Okay. So we'll be addressing many issues that pose genuine moral dilemmas. We'll be talking about discretion a lot in this class and making decisions. The thing that may frustrate you is there really isn't right and wrong answers to a lot of this stuff. A lot of it is you making a choice. So you just have to justify your answers. I can't have somebody grade for me. I have to read every response because There is no right answer. There's no answer key, but your justification, your explanation using materials and knowledge, lecture, book materials, things you've read to incorporate to support that opinion, that is what I will be looking for. Okay, so you don't have to get in my head and figure out which answer I want. You have to state your answer, but you have to justify it and support it with knowledge that you learned in class. Okay. But one of the main things we always want to do when we think about this concept is protecting the innocent. The whole idea of criminal procedure law is protecting innocent. What if we use bad means to achieve some end and it ends up we put an innocent person in jail? Our goal is to never, ever have an innocent person go to jail. We as a society view it much better to let a guilty person go free than to ever, ever put an innocent person in jail. So we have to keep that in mind. How do we do that? What procedures are important to make sure innocent people don't get put in jail? Now, to really get you thinking about which side you're on this perspective, I have this little scenario where kids were you can read it. Kids are throwing rocks across the border. Sometimes they're hitting agents on the US side. So one day, one of the agents on the US side opens fire on these boys that are throwing rocks, and they end up killing one of the boys across the border. So the question is, who do you feel bad for? Do you feel bad for the officers that have rocks thrown at them? Or do you feel bad for the kid who just threw a rock and was met with a bullet? So you have to kind of delve into, and it's not an immigration issue, it's not a racial issue, it's more of an issue. Do you believe in stopping crime, or do you believe in individual rights? Okay, and that's really the balance that you try to hit. And one of the ways to figure out how you feel on this issue is decide, are you more afraid of criminals committing crime, or are you more afraid of police abusing their power? How do you fall on this spectrum? Okay, which one do you fear the most? The crime or police abuse? Depending how you feel on that issue will affect ultimately how you feel on this class as we move through. There's always this inverse relationship that's going to go on in this class throughout the whole semester. People that believe and fear police power more, they believe in due process. They believe that the Constitution, constitutional rights are the most important thing we have, and they should never be violated under any purpose forever for anything. That is a due process model person. They advocate for due process rights, individual rights advocate. Okay. Some people don't care about the means to achieve it that much. They really care about stopping crime. They think that is the thing to fear. And if you have to violate some constitutional rights over here, some individual rights, it's okay, but because we're going to achieve the purpose of stopping crime. You are going to be more of a crime control model person. You want to stop crime. If you're crime control, you want to give police as much power as possible. If you're an individual rights due process person, you want to limit police discretion and power. You're going to have to figure out where you fit on that spectrum. That becomes the theme of the whole class. And we're going to talk about that balance throughout the whole class. And I promise I'm going to tick you off at some point in the class. At some point, there's going to be a Supreme Court case that comes down on crime control, and people are going to be due process people, and they're going to be upset. And then there'll be other times where the Supreme Court comes down on due process, and you're going to be a crime control person, and you're going to be really mad that the court is handcuffing police in that way. So everybody's going to be mad at me at some point during the semester. I'm just the messenger. Don't kill the messenger. But I will provide you with what the law says now to enable you to make proper decisions. But you can kind of figure out where you fall on the spectrum. Now, if you look historically, it's changed over time. It's not a consistent thing. During the 60s, people were sick of police abuse. So the courts, Supreme Court, swung heavily to due process model and individual rights. So Supreme Court came down with a lot of criminal procedure law, putting a lot of restrictions on what police could do, greatly reducing their discretion in order to protect individual rights. In more modern times, the pendulum has swung much closer to crime control. Starting September 11th with the World Trade Center, we've swung hard to the idea we need to stop crime. And if that means we need to sacrifice some of our individual rights, then we may have to sacrifice some of our individual rights in order to stop crime. Okay, so right now as a society, we are a little more towards crime control. I'm starting to see a little slide back again. I don't know where we'll end up. That's just my opinion, but that is kind of where the pendulum, but it's a shifting thing. And the Supreme Court, depending on who's on it, if you have people on the Supreme Court that are more due process, they're going to put more restrictions on police. If you have people on the Supreme Court that are more crime control, they're going to give more powers to the police. So depending on who makes up the Supreme Court and where their philosophy falls between these two things will affect the criminal procedure laws that police have to follow. Okay. And again, like I said, our goal is always, always, always to protect the innocent. So this is an example. We'll talk about Ronald Cotton later in the semester. But Ronald Cotton spent 11 years on death row for a rape. And it eventually came out that he did not commit the rape. Somebody else did. And there were a lot of procedural problems with the case. Police did a lot of things. Prosecutors did a lot of things that were not right. And it ultimately led to him losing 11 years in prison for a crime he didn't commit. So we never want that to happen. We never want innocent people to give up part of their lives for crimes they didn't commit. And in order to assure that doesn't happen, we have to protect some individual and constitutional rights. Okay, so think about where you fall on this. One of your assignments is to participate in the Chapter 1 discussion, Balancing Rights. This is going to be assessing, critically thinking about how you feel on this issue, and then supporting it with some of the materials that I posted that you can look at. The last thing I want to talk about is this idea of sources of law. And I'm just going to quickly go over this. Hopefully you had some introduction to this in your Intro to Criminal Justice class. When you're looking for laws, you have to look at the sources of those laws. So source is where you look to find something. So if I say, what is the definition of something? You need the source for definitions, your dictionary, right? So what are our sources for laws? Well, the Constitution is the #1 source for all laws. No law can violate the Constitution. So the Constitution is the main law of our land, the supreme law of our land. We have common law or case law. Common laws are the rules or laws created by judges in their judicial decisions. Then we have statutory law. Statutory laws are laws written by the legislative branch, Congress, or the state assembly and Senate. So the legislative branch creates statutory laws. And then administrative law are laws created by administrative agencies. So we have all these little agencies, the IRS and the FBI, the CIA, and all these things. They can make their own rules and regulations that have to be followed within their department, though that is considered administrative law. So you have to kind of know what you're looking at, and then you can find the source for where to look for the laws that you're looking at. Since this is a criminal procedure law class, the two main sources we're going to use for the law are the U.S. Constitution and court cases. So the the U.S. Constitution is the supreme law of the land. We're specifically going to look at the 4th, 5th, 6th, 8th, and 14th Amendments. Those are going to be the ones that are going to govern most of what we do in here. That is the main law. But that was created hundreds of years ago. So we have courts that interpret what that document says and what it means. So that is common law or court law or case law. So we have our Constitution, and then we're going to read Supreme Court cases that interpret that Constitution and how it applies. So those are the two main sources we're going to look at. Okay. Now we have all these constitutional rights, but are they absolute? Does that mean they cannot violate them under any circumstance? So let's think about it. We have the right to free speech. Does that mean free speech can never be limited? We can say whatever we want, anywhere we want, anytime we want. Or are we allowed to put some limits on that right? And it is absolutely not absolute, okay? We can limit our constitutional rights, but the more we limit it, the more justification or evidence or purpose we have to have for that limitation. So that's what we call the graduated objective basis test. The more we're going to limit your rights, the more legal justification we have to have for it. So we're going to talk about, we have all these 4th, 5th, 6th, 8th, 14th Amendment rights. Can those rights be limited? Yes, in certain circumstances, but only with valid justifications. Okay, so the last part of my PowerPoint is just talking about the class. This was also in the intro to the class PowerPoint in the introductory materials. One thing I just want to point out, I'm teaching you what the law is now, but you have chosen a profession that the laws change very rapidly. So things are changing every day. So I'm teaching you what they are today, but by the end of the year, it could be completely different. So it could be wrong. So I'm going to hopefully teach you the right thing now, and hopefully it won't change very soon. But understand, when you're going into the criminal justice profession, you are making a lifelong commitment to continue to stay up to date on the laws, because they are always changing. So just know, because you know the law now, doesn't mean in 5 years you still know the law. You could be wrong. So you have to be familiar with the changes in the law and how they affect what you're doing. So I have posted all of this stuff. We're using MindTab, so please make sure you have your access code and enter into it through my Blackboard class. Don't go to the Cengage website. Go to it through my GCC class. Click on a MindTab assignment and enter your code that way, so you're already in the class and it's linked to my class. Make sure you read through the syllabus. Try to do all the emails to me through my GCC, not the college email, the class email, because then I'm in the class, I can answer your questions, and I know right away how I can answer you. All your assignments, exams, quizzes, discussions, all of that are in there. Make sure you've done all of those first assignments just to get familiar with the class and the Blackboard. Click around and play. You can't hurt anything. I just want to quickly talk about plagiarism. Plagiarism is not just taking somebody's whole paper and turning it in. Plagiarism is anytime you take somebody else's ideas and use them as your own without giving them proper recognition. Okay. So when you are doing some of your projects in here, you can't just cut and paste whole things into your projects. You have to put them in your own words, and you have to cite where you've got that information. Otherwise, it's plagiarism. And I run all my assignments through a plagiarism check. So I will know that you do it. It tells me exactly what percentage of it is plagiarized. If you are caught plagiarism, you'll receive a 0 on that assignment. You will be required to attend a plagiarism class. If you attend that class, I will allow you to redo that assignment after you've shown you've attended the class and you redo the assignment. You will be placed on a list for future reference. If I catch you again, there will be no exceptions. And I could, if it's significant enough, report you to the dean of students, and you could get expelled from school. So please do your own work in this class. Do not plagiarize. You can read this. These are just general rules. I'm not too worried about it. And then this is just a little activity to have you think about discretion and abuse of power and decision making and limitations on each of those. You can kind of think through this activity. Okay. So I hope you enjoyed the first lecture. Hopefully it wasn't too long and boring for you, and really start thinking about some of these concepts. This class is not going to be just a class to regurgitate information. This is a super critical thinking application course. I'll teach you the law, and you're really going to have to critically think about your answers for some of these things. So really take some time to think about what you learned throughout the lectures. I enjoyed meeting you so far and working with you. I hope you have a great semester. I'm always here. If you need anything, just call. I put my cell phone on the syllabus. You can text me. And if you need anything, I have an open door policy. So I really look forward to working with you. I hope you have a great start of your semester. Bye.